to another episode of the Pro Report. I'm your host, Chris Dell, sitting here with my co host, partner in crime, Mr. Joe Spano. We're going to be here to talk about NFL futures. Obviously, the last time you heard us, we were talking a lot about the NBA Finals and through the NBA playoffs, and we're transitioning now to football season. Joe, you got some season win total bets we're going to talk about here. I want to take a look at some of the awards markets and some player props that I'm looking at, season-long player props for the NFL season as well. So we'll kind of go back and forth here, keep this a little bit short, and we'll be diving into this probably about once a week until close to the start of the season or maybe right up until week one, and we'll keep you updated on the format and all that. So, Joe, I know we haven't caught up on live stream since then. We've done a lot of work behind the scenes, but how'd your NBA Finals go, and what are you looking at for NFL?
Generally, we did well in the NBA Finals, but like every round of the playoffs, as we moved through the series, margins got tighter and tighter, and our dominance waned. Don't get me wrong. We still had a tremendous NBA Finals. We were up about 17 units on the NBA Finals. That's, through the 6 games of the NBA Finals. We didn't have a losing game until game 6. Game 6 was our only losing game of the NBA Finals. We were profitable on all the other 5 games, and where we ended up below the 20-unit total was because of some of our prop bets. We had a lot of prop bets. We were very Celtics heavy in our prop bets. We both hit what we felt was the most obvious prop bet series to go over 5.5 games. We both cashed on that, but I had a handful of other series props that were all built around the success of the Celtics, and that cost us a handful of units. Jason Tatum as MVP, Celtics to win the series. They were all plus money propositions, but they were all built around the Celtics winning, and when the Celtics didn't win, we gave back some units. But overall, plus 17 units on the NBA Finals. That's 6 games plus props. So all in all, very solid work as far as the NBA Finals, and we're very, very pleased there. We're now migrating into, I'm doing a little baseball on Twitter. Again, I've never been a big baseball handicapper, but we're testing it out to see if we're going to bring that to the site a little bit. And I'm also diving deep into NFL futures. For me, it's a little early for a lot of the NBA futures stuff just because there's trades and free agency and so much left before we know what NBA team rosters are going to look like that I'm not really diving into the NBA futures, but I'm hitting it hard on Bet365 and DraftKings, who really are the 2 websites that are the kings in many ways of NFL futures. And I've got 5 futures built around over-under total wins for the regular season on teams. And each week as we go through, right up until we get towards the start of the college football season and the start of the NFL season, I'll bring you a handful of different future plays from some different areas, whether it's over-under team totals, whether it's to win the division, whether it's to win the conference, whether it's to win the Super Bowl, we get into some player props, leading rushers, leading receivers, leading throwers, things of that nature. There's a lot. If you really look at Bet365 and DraftKings, there's an awful lot out there. Those are the 2 sites that, from what I've seen, that have the largest array and in many cases the best odds on a lot of these NFL future plays. You can bounce around. There's some in some other places, and you always want to shop for the best line value. But that's where I'm finding the lion's share of them, especially Bet365.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know for me, I'm going to be looking just in terms of referencing on this show here on DraftKings and FanDuel, but I'll definitely pull up Bet365 as an alternate window here because I know that there's a lot of good offerings that they have when it comes to a lot of sports, golf included. So why don't we dive in, Joe? I know just recapping from my end, NBA Finals went well at the end. Player props were up and down from game to game, but the series props that we have wound up being really good towards the end of the finals. Wound up putting us up over 25 units for the NBA season as a whole, or right under that 25 unit marker. But the NBA draft was very good to us. Wound up going 8-2 on our best bets of 1 unit or more. and that put us up over 30 units for my NBA plays for the season since I started doing that February 25th. So I was very happy with the results there since joining Sports Map Elite. Now NFL, NBA combined, about 37, 38 units overall. So looking to keep the momentum going, learn from the losses, most importantly, try to continue to improve the process. And, looking forward to NFL, not just player props, but also just a lot of the betting we're going to be doing throughout the course of the season, talking about anything from sides, totals, teasers, kind of live futures betting in season, so to speak. So I'm ready to dive in, man. I know you got some season win total bets. Why don't we start off? I know you got a couple of them.
I got a couple that I really like.
How about, let's say, what if you could only pick one? What is your absolute favorite season win total bet at the moment?
Eagles over 8.5 wins. Now you got to lay a lot of wood. You're laying $1.90, but if you think about it, Eagles won 9 games last year. They play in one of the weaker divisions in the National Football League, the NFC East. The Commanders have a long way to go. The Giants have a long way to go. The Cowboys lost some key pieces this offseason and probably will not be as good as they were last year. And the Eagles have added some key pieces. They added a number 1 receiver in A.J. Brown, and they added a quality number 2 cornerback who would be a number 1 cornerback for many teams to play opposite Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So they've really helped themselves. They're in a weak division. They have the 3rd easiest schedule in the National Football League. So Eagles over 8.5. Right now, it's all the way up to minus 190. I got it when I did my research earlier. I got it at where did I get it? Minus 167.
Yeah.
I got it.
I'm guessing a lot of books must have 9.5. I see DK's even juiced to the over minus 120 at 9.5 right now.
I don't hate that either. I got to be honest with you. I'm pretty confident the Eagles are going to win 10 games. So I don't hate over 9.5 at minus 120. And again, you're right. You're not able to find 8.5 everywhere anymore. Bet365 had 8.5. You're going to do your shopping on it. And it's climbing quickly in the wrong direction. Some books and some shops may not have 8.5 at all. Like you said, DraftKings doesn't have 8.5. They've got 9.5, which I don't think is a terrible play. But you know me. I'll lay the additional juice for the safety in this spot. But here's one, and again, you know me with futures. It's early. Injuries can happen. They're tough to deal with. Yep. These are very difficult bets to deal with. But I would put multiple units. I would definitely go multiple units, even at minus 190 on the Eagles over 8.5. And I would sprinkle another unit on Eagles over 9.5 because you're getting a better value there at minus 120.
In terms of the, obviously, one of the references we use when we do our research is strength of schedule for the upcoming season. And certain websites have different metrics for how they do that. And we kind of piece things together on our end as well and come up with our own versions of it. But, the Eagles kind of across the industry, I would say for the most part, you're looking at a team that has top 5 strength of schedule in terms of easiest schedule on the season, right next to the New York Giants. Cowboys closer to the middle of the pack there. And then, looking over here for Washington. So all these teams were relative easy schedules here, but
because they're in the NFC East, and the NFC East is bad. They're going to play each other.
Yeah.
And then when you look at everybody that wasn't the then you look, because the Eagles didn't finish at the very top of the division, they don't get a first place schedule. So those 2 games that could make their schedule harder aren't first place games. And that's why the Dallas schedule is a little tougher.
Right. Yeah. And you're looking at just the NFC as a whole.
2 games of wiggle room. There's, it used to be more. There's now, since they've gone to the 4 divisions in each conference, there's only 2 games of wiggle room with teams in the same conference between the first place team and the last place team. That's the only variety. Otherwise, you play your own division and you guys play the other 3 divisions. So you basically have the same opponents outside of 2 games. So this tells you something about the state of the NFC East and why the Eagles are such a good play here, because the division's not very good, particularly at the bottom with the Giants and the Commanders.
Yeah, I know. I've heard some people talking about Jalen Hurts as a potential long shot for an MVP award. Or if you like the Eagles, he has the upside to do that. Obviously, from fantasy circles, he has huge upside with his rushing ability. I love that. I love the addition of AJ Brown to the team. I hope that they're going to be able to scheme the ball to AJ Brown properly. Obviously, he didn't really have much of a pass first offense in Tennessee. So moving to Philly, I don't know if it's going to impact him too much, but absolutely, one of the most dynamic playmakers at the wide receiver position in the NFL there. And when you're looking at the opening schedule, especially if we're talking about a team for the Eagles that, let's say, they play Cleveland in week 2, Cleveland's looking like it might not have Watson at that point. Then you're talking about, playing the Jets in week 1, playing the Browns, going to Cleveland with no Deshaun Watson in week 2, then going to Miami, possibly an overrated Dolphins team in week 3. So, that's obviously something advantageous. We're actually the Lions, Vikings, and Washington Commanders. Sorry, I had these notes here. I was looking at the preseason schedule real quick. My bad on that. So, yeah, that's what I had down in terms of the strength of schedule there is at the Lions, obviously, which could be a little bit of an improved team, but we're not considering them a playoff team at this point. Vikings, Commanders, Jaguars, Cardinals, and then Cowboys in week 6. So definitely a lot of winnable games on the opening part of that schedule there before their week 7 bye. So I don't hate that play at all.
I mean, and you bring me into actually another play. You talked about the Jaguars. Under 6.5 wins, you only got to lay 130.
I like that.
Again, here's a team that's going to be better just by the fact that Urban Meyer is no longer their head coach, and the star rookie quarterback is now in year 2. So there's another year of development with Lawrence, and Urban Meyer is not there to slow down that development. But let's realize something. There wasn't much development in year 1 because of how poorly coached they were by Urban Meyer and his staff. So that retarded progress is going to show and rear its ugly head here in year 2. So 6.5 seems like an inflated win total to me. The Jaguars spent in free agency, but didn't exactly kill it. They gave an awful lot of money to a number 3 receiver in Christian Kirk. When you look at their receiver core, there's some talent, but there's no number 1. Yeah. There's an awful lot of number 3 receivers, guys like Laviska Shenault and Christian Kirk. There's a whole bunch of number 3 type receivers there. They paid a bunch of money, more money than anybody should spend on Evan Ingram. So there's no Haas in the passing game to help a young quarterback. Yeah. It's an ordinary offensive line. Spent a lot of money on a guard. They still can't protect on the edges all that well. Defensively, they're not particularly good. Travis Etienne returning from injury and perhaps being a shot in the arm. Well, I've heard a lot of good things about him as far as the people in Jacksonville being impressed by him so far. But again, they haven't worn pads or anything yet. But when you look, you don't see a ton of dynamic playmakers. You see a quarterback who year 1, there was no development because of how poorly coached and the mess that the situation was in Jacksonville. You see a team that spent but didn't spend well. You see a lack of bell cow type weapons offensively. You see an ordinary offensive line at best and an ordinary defense.
Yeah.
I don't know how they win 7 games. Even in a 17, they're not going 7-10. So under 6.5 at minus 130 seems like another multiple unit play.
I like that play a lot. Yeah.
Because think about it. At their best, if they're the healthiest team in the league, they're not winning 7 games. So you don't have to worry, oh my God, what happens if they get injured here? Well, it'll only do you a favor. So this one's easy to lay multiple units on to me.
Yeah. A lot of people want to put the blame. The narrative got so overblown on Urban Meyer. Look, I think Urban Meyer was a terrible NFL coach. Don't get me wrong. But do we blame 100% of that on also how bad Trevor Lawrence looked in his first year as a rookie there? And this is a culture in terms of a franchise in Jacksonville that has not had a winning culture in a long time, or maybe ever for that matter. So like you said, those were 2 of the worst. I mean, for me, I started my NFL, analysis. I was a beat reporter a long time ago, hence the mad journalist, but I've been into more fantasy and DFS even before I got into sports betting and player props, etc. So for me, I follow skill players very meticulously when it comes to the NFL. And those were probably the worst two in terms of overpaid, overrated signings of the offseason. We're bringing in Christian Kirk at that pay grade. I mean, you could argue it was basically Christian Kirk's contract that forced A.J. Brown to leave Tennessee and not get paid there. So I just, again, like you said, Christian Kirk, he's a number 3 receiver right now at best. He has some potential. He has some upside in the right situation. He's not a number 1. He's not a number 2. Evan Ingram, I mean, I'm surprised that a team was willing to sign him as their future tight end in general there too. He's had plenty of opportunities in his career to make something of it and hasn't really done so. So going into basically, Trevor Lawrence's like rookie 1B year, like because basically he didn't have a true rookie year under Urban Meyer. So I agree with you 100% on that. And just the fact that, Joe, there's no coincidence here that you bet an over on an NFC team and there's such a vast discrepancy in the overall talent top to bottom in the AFC versus the NFC, as we all know. So betting overs on certain NFC teams, betting unders on certain AFC teams, I agree in terms of that strategy overall of how we're starting things here. So I really like the play on Jacksonville under 6.5. And let's not forget here, for people that are, maybe a little bit more new casuals when it comes to season win total betting, if you go in and you add up all the win totals that a specific sportsbook has out there for all the NFL teams, you're going to get a win total that's more than what exists for the teams that actually win. So even though there are some juiced unders here for the season win total market, you would come out positive EV, even if you're just betting unders across the board. So
right.
You can specifically target that type of an under and specifically target an under on an AFC team that really has nothing going for themselves outside the fact that Urban Meyer isn't there. Yeah, I totally back that play. That's something that's on my eye for sure when it comes to putting together my season win total card. So let's move on. You got Philly. You like them over 8.5. Juiced over. You're willing to pay the vig there. You also like the 9.5 at closer to even money. You like the Jaguars under 6.5. I love that play as well. DK has a -130 right now. What's a third NFL season win total you're looking at, Joe?
All right. I've got, let's go back to the NFC East. This time we're going to hit an under on the NFC East. Giants under 7.5, -145. Where did I don't see how 7.5 is the number. It should be 6.5. There's the Giants are not winning 8 games. The Giants are not going 8-9. I understand moving Joe Judge out and bringing in and Dave Gettleman and bringing in the new regime with Dayball and Joe Shane. I understand that they made some improvements in the offseason, and just the coaching will improve the look of this offense, and they had an excellent draft and all these other things. But this was a team that couldn't spend any money in free agency because of the cap situation that they were in. They're going to be, if they're going to have any success, they're going to be relying an awful lot on rookies to explode out of the box. They're asking for a lot here. It's still a suspect offensive line that I believe by 2023 will be excellent. Unfortunately for the Giants, this futures play is on the 2022 Giants. So offensive line's going to have growing pains this year. They have talent at their skilled positions as far as the receivers. They just can't get anyone on the field. They're always hurt. So there's an issue there. They've got a shell-shocked quarterback in Daniel Jones. And again, is he savable? Or did what Jason Garrett and Joe Judge did to him the last 2 years, did they turn him into David Carr? Is he a shell-shocked, top-drafted quarterback? I think you may see he's a shell-shocked, top-drafted quarterback. Defensively, unproven pass rush, adding Thibodeau will help a lot. Strength of this team last year defensively was their front three on the defensive line. All that depth's been stripped away. They lost their best corner in Bradbury. They had to get rid of him because of that contract. And he goes over a division foe in the Eagles. So the back line of that secondary outside of Adoree Jackson, they're going to ask an awful lot out of some young corners. They have no proven safety depth outside of Xavier McKinney. They're going to play a role player in Julian Love, and they're going to start him at safety. So there's a lot of holes here. They're going to have a relatively easy schedule because they're playing a bad division, but they're not nearly as good as the Cowboys, and they're not nearly as good as the Eagles. I think, they'll have a lot of cap money in the offseason of leading into 2023, and I think they've got a good regime there. And if this were 2023, I don't think I'd be on this number. But for the 2022 Giants, I think it's going to be a long season, and I think they're hard-pressed to win 6 games, much less win 8. So I'll take the Giants under 7.5 wins. It's juiced up to minus 145. I think that's an easy one.
Okay. So my only pushback there is that, we talked a little bit about it, or in your handicap there, is the Giants, they have the easiest schedule in terms of strength of schedule by Sharp Football Analysis in the NFL for this upcoming season. I like the move by Daboll only for the reason of what he did with Josh Allen. And at least, let's say theoretically, Daniel Jones has some of the same skill set that Josh Allen has, at least in terms of running the ball, in terms of being a mobile quarterback. Obviously there's big question marks with Kenny Golladay. There's big question marks with how healthy can Kadarius Toney be throughout the course of regular season, even though he flashed when he was really healthy last year. So those are the only things that I bring up. Obviously, looking at their season schedule, just looking at the beginning, they got Cowboys and Titans 2 of their first 3 weeks. They play the Panthers in week 2. So there's no guaranteed wins there by any means. So I think the second half of the schedule is when you look at, playing Houston in week 10, Detroit week 11. Then you're looking at Washington twice in weeks 13 and 15. So maybe there's a chance to rack up a few wins there. But I agree in terms of, I think the line is kind of right. DK moved it to a flat 7, minus 125. They have some talent on the defense, but I agree with you. There are holes there. So that's something. The only thing that concerns me there is kind of jolt in the arm type of thing, is that Brian Daboll's coming in, and can Daniel Jones raise, his floor in terms of what he can do as a playmaker there in a weak, NFC conference, obviously. Do you have the Giants ranked last in that division? Where do you have them? Because obviously you like the Eagles. What's your actual ranking in terms of how you think those wins are going to play out?
Them and the Commanders are going to be nip and tuck for that bottom spot. I'll be blunt. I don't think the Giants sweep the Commanders, and I don't think the Commanders sweep the Giants. I see them splitting there. Yeah. I think the Giants are hard pressed to win any other game in division. So I think they're going to win. I think they're probably going to go 1-5 in division. I think I think the Commanders will go 1-5 in division as well.
Are you looking at Washington's under?
I didn't. It didn't grab my attention. I think it was a lower number, I believe.
No, it's actually 8 compared to 7.
Wow. All right. I must have missed that. That would definitely be something to look at as well, because I don't think either of those teams is going to do much, and I expect the Eagles and the Cowboys to really dominate that division, and that's where they're going to clean up, is on the bottom. That would definitely be a play to look at. I don't know if it was different on Bet365. I don't know how I might have blown right by it in this detailed analysis, but that's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, I'm just looking at DK for the purposes of this show, but we'll wind up doing a few write-ups over the next week and doing some stuff. But maybe there's also value on Eagles to win division, plus 165 on DraftKings. I'm sure if you shop around, you can find a better number there too. And I'm with you there. I think Dallas is slightly overrated almost by default every single season, whereas Philly's coming in. I believe you don't want to
consider their under. If this division wasn't so bad and their schedule wasn't so easy, I'd consider their under, because I believe they're 10.5.
DK's got it at 10, so it might have moved down a little bit.
I saw it at 10.5 when I was doing this, and I stayed off of it because of the division and because of the way I think the top dominates the bottom of this division, as we talked about earlier. Yeah. But honestly, at 10.5, the under's enticing.
Honestly, I have unders that I'm looking at closely from not every team in NFC, obviously, but almost every team. And I was already looking at Washington. And now that I've heard your handicap on the Giants and just the division as a whole, it really pushes me even stronger towards Washington because I just don't believe in Wentz as a quarterback at this point.
No.
But it's something worth looking at just in terms of getting that one win is so valuable when it comes to these win totals within divisions, within conferences. So that's something I'm definitely going to take a look at. All right, Joe. So we got Philly over, we've got Jaguars under, and we have Giants under.
And we're probably going to go back and evaluate Washington, but that's a likely under too. If that number is, like I said, at 8, heavily juiced, I'll still play that one. I like that as well. All props to you. I either missed it, didn't see it, didn't strike my attention. Now that you bring it to me and we discuss it this way, I like that a lot. I do have an over in the AFC that I like. I just think that I understand that the Super Bowl loser hangover is a real thing, but I do like what the Bengals did in the offseason.
All right.
It's 9.5 at -115. So it's not incredibly heavily juiced at all. And they'd have to match last year's record at 10-7.
I mean, that's my team, Joe.
I do.
That's my
team.
I like language, Joe.
Look at what they did in the offseason.
I love it.
Again, some teams were glitzier in the offseason, but quietly adding La'el Collins to play right tackle is huge. You're a Bengals fan. What was their biggest weakness last year? And what was their biggest weakness in the postseason? What if there was anything that slowed them at all down in the postseason? What was the thing that really slowed them down in the postseason? If you could say a team got slowed down in the postseason that made it to the Super Bowl,
the forever pessimist in my inner Bengals fandom heart is going to be Zach Taylor, but yeah, obviously it's the offensive line was a huge issue, and they brought in, to steal your thunder there, La'el Collins, Alex Kappa, and Ted Karras. They got one of the starting offensive linemen for the Patriots, the center. They got a starting offensive lineman from the Bucs, one of the best offensive lines in the league, and one of the most talented offensive linemen in the league from the Cowboys. So I thought it's an we all know what happened, but I think it's one of the best free agents signings in terms of a group of players.
Not sexy, but it works, right? It's not sexy at all, but it works. And
as a Bengals fan, to me, that's sexy. Seeing Joe Burrow protected with those three, that's
exactly.
I love it.
Wait till you see what Joe Mixon does in the run game with some road graders in front of him to help open up some things. And I'll tell you something, and I'll be honest with you, I like La'el Collins a lot better at guard than I do at tackle. I think he's a quality right tackle. He's not an all-pro or a Pro Bowl right tackle, but he's a very solid top third in the league right tackle. I honestly think when you kick him inside to guard, he's an all-pro. And we've seen that. If you look at his early work at guard before he moved outside, he's one of the best guards in the league. He's still a top third of the league right tackle, and I don't think there's any question about that. And compared to what the Bengals were trotting out there last year at right tackle, that's a huge upgrade. You mentioned the 2 interior pieces that you added. Once this line gels, and offensive lines gel faster than they ever have before because these players are now more and more used to not having the same guy next to them every year than they were compared to years past. So once this line gels, it's a top 10 line in the league.
Yeah,
Joe Burrow.
I agree.
Joe Burrow shut me up. I had some doubts about Burrow being an elite quarterback. He's an elite quarterback. That's an elite wide receiver core loaded with number 1 type receivers. Joe Mixon and P. Ryan are a nice 1-2 punch at the running back position. The front 7, I don't think has very many weaknesses. You don't have a ton of great names, but they can get after the quarterback. They do a solid job of stopping the run.
Yeah.
If there's one thing they weren't able to address.
I like the play, and DK's already moved it up to 10, flat 10 here. But you can actually now get plus money on over 10, which I actually like. I like Bengals as like a kind of like a co-favorite to win the division here. Next to Baltimore. I don't see Pittsburgh having enough offense to keep up here.
And you're also going to get some huge plus money because everybody's making Baltimore the favorite to win that division, expecting the full rebound off the injuries.
Honestly, it's kind of like what we talked about with some of the future stuff we were doing in our series bets for the NBA Finals, where you see two really good plus money numbers. And with all of the weapons that Baltimore has coming back, running back, and especially on defense, I mean, you can bet Baltimore and Cincinnati plus 160, plus 190, shop around and get the best number. And you can come out almost with like an even money or close to even money bet if
Right.
either of those two teams win. So I really like those two. I think it's properly rated there. And if news comes out on Watson missing a lot of time, maybe missing the season, then you're going to see even shorter numbers on both those
get
teams.
it now.
There. So,
Get it
yeah.
now. I will ask you one question about the Bengals before we get on out of here. Are you concerned about the corners? They did not, it's still going to be Eli Apple starting at one of the corners. Does that worry you?
No, it doesn't, because Eli Apple had a pretty decent season. He's a decent starting cornerback, but he can't guard Cooper Kupp, but no one can. So I think that like when the Bengals really got into the spotlight, so to speak, in the playoffs, deep in the playoffs in the Super Bowl, I thought Eli Apple had a pretty good run up until that Super Bowl there. And I want this defense as a whole is very underrated. Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator there,
Brilliant.
the things he did especially in the playoffs and late in the season. This is a team that like once they actually opened the offense up a little bit, it enabled their defense to play at a higher level, go after more turnovers and be more aggressive. So I think that the offensive line is like that's the base of all that now, to where it could really open up not just the offense and Burrow and his weapons on offense, but also the defense too. And you're looking at across the board. I truly believe that almost every single starting player for the Bengals on defense has Pro Bowl potential. Obviously, the big signing was put in the free agent tag on Jesse Bates. Yeah, Von Bell, who came up with that huge interception against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. And then Chidobe Awuzie, man, he was the former number one defensive back for the Cowboys. He had a really good year for the Bengals last season. They got a couple guys coming back. Joseph Asai was a high draft pick from.
I like Joe Asai out of Texas. Yeah.
He at the defensive end position where they're really deep. You're talking about Trey Hendrickson over there. Like he had a Pro Bowl season. And then you're looking at him right behind him as Asai with not the pressure to perform right away. And then you saw the big guys on the defensive line all had big sacks. DJ Reader, BJ Hill, like these are solid signings that they've had over the last couple of seasons. I really like what the Bengals did defensively and what they did actually in the draft, which was a little bit debatable, but they drafted a lot of high-end safety talent just in case Jesse Bates continues to improve. He had a great season last year. Maybe he becomes too expensive if he has another good season this year. They have a lot of depth behind him as well. So I like the depth that this team has on defense. So I like that pick with you there. I'm bullish on the Bengals. And this is coming from a Bengals fan here, a lifelong Bengals fan.
Do you see any weakness? Where do you see, if any, weaknesses? I isolated their corners. And again, it's all comparative.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's very many other places with what they did in the draft and in free agency where you can really pick on them. I like the front seven. I like the O-line. I like the skilled players. I like the running back tandem. I love the quarterback. If I had to isolate one thing that I think could be a little bit of a sore spot, and it's all comparative, it's the corners. It's the outside corners.
I think the depth at corners maybe a little bit, but they had some decent draft picks there, and they still have Mike Hilton as well, who had a really good year. I would say the linebacker depth is the only thing that concerns me. Like I'm a big fan of Logan Wilson. I thought that was a terrible holding call. They called on him against Cooper Kupp, but Jermaine Pratt had the big interception in the first round against the Raiders, I believe. So that's the only behind those two guys, which I would say they're above average linebackers. Pratt has some potential there. So we'll see. I would say maybe that's their biggest weakness on defense, is just the overall depth. Like they don't have like that star player on defense, which is maybe people look at as a weakness, but I think they're pretty solid all around. Honestly, Joe, the only thing that concerns me with this Bengals team is the coach. And I think that Zach Taylor, he just needs to stay out of the way, because this team has the talent on both sides of the ball. And I thought that some of the game planning and the scheming he had in the playoffs was just way too conservative. And I think it came back to bite them a little bit in the Super Bowl against Los Angeles. But hey, they got that far to begin with. So I'm hoping to see improvements from Taylor as a young head coach in this league, as a play caller, that he doesn't hold this team back. But I'm optimistic overall, and I like the play there as well.
I'm going to give you a final thought. I know you got to run. Finally, hopefully there'll be some recognition for the most underrated and underappreciated player personnel guy in the NFL, and that's a guy by the name of Duke Tobin. And you're a Bengals fan, you know who he is. Mike Brown gets credit when things go right. Duke Tobin's the guy that pushes all the buttons there. Duke Tobin is a brilliant personnel man,
Yeah.
and Mike Brown really is not, but Duke Tobin is, and Duke Tobin's the guy that should get credit for what's been built in Cincinnati.
Well, the problem is that they've had a lot of really good free agency signing classes over the years, but they were kind of like buried underneath because Mike Brown had too much of a commitment, not just to Marvin Lewis, but more so to Andy Dalton as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the reason why you saw a team like lose 7 straight wild card games in the playoffs and never win a playoff game until this year. So I thought that was kind of overshadowed a bit, but yeah, 100%. And I think that there's no coincidence that they had this type of signing class even after they make that far of a run. I thought they addressed some key positions of need there, so I like that. Joe, is there one more season?
No, that's all I got. That's all I got today. I'll dig deeper, but I think between the 5 we got and the one you unearthed with the Redskins, I think I'm in pretty good shape on my win total futures. We could get into divisions and conference and Super Bowls, and we could start getting into, and this is as we move forward, rushing leaders, passing leaders, receiving leaders, and things like that over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I got one player prop here that I'll close this off as a best bet for me. I like Aaron Jones. I like his overs on his reception props and receiving yards props. When you look at the departure, obviously, of Devontae Adams with Green Bay going over there to Las Vegas, I think Aaron Jones, you're talking about opening up just a ton of opportunity in the passing game, and we've seen him here. I'm looking for the current line on DraftKings. I'm not sure if I've seen it there, but I have a write-up that I'm putting out as something that I bet very early, before the season starts, but there are a few other props that I'm looking at. But, Devontae Adams, the guy that, he was 3rd in the NFL in targets despite missing a game in Week 8 last season, right there behind target monsters and Cooper Kupp, Deontay Johnson, even ahead of Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, et cetera. So his departure, and when you look at the Green Bay Packers depth chart at receiver, I mean, they brought in absolutely nobody. And I know Rodgers can still play well without Devontae Adams, but in the games that Devontae Adams missed, we saw almost a doubling increase from targets, receptions, receiving yards from Aaron Jones on that team. And the only thing that held him back from getting a lot of that third down work in previous seasons before last year was having Jamal Williams on the teams and them splitting a lot of that receiving work and opportunity. And obviously Jamal Williams spent last year in Detroit, but now you're talking about no more Jamal Williams last year, now no more Devontae Adams. And the fact they brought in no one at receiver, they drafted rookie Christian Watson, who is slated to be one of the 3 starting wide receivers this year. And then they brought in Sammy Watkins, who's kind of far past his prime at this point. So you're talking about Watson and Watkins, Joe. That sounds like more of like a law firm to me.
They got to throw the ball to somebody, don't they?
the law firm of Watson and Watkins is going to be 2 of the top 3 leading receivers for Aaron Rodgers. At least on paper, it is. I think Aaron Jones is going to be one of the top 2, if not the top receiving options for Aaron Rodgers out of the screen game. A lot of different unique formations. So whatever the numbers you can get on him right now, I got to go back and circle back to see what the updated numbers are. But that's something I'm absolutely looking to target and make a bet on for my first player prop season-long bet of the season.
Well, you got a Jamal Williams reference and you got a Duke Tobin reference. If you doubt that we can go deep and we've got inside information and we've got some knowledge that a lot of the others don't, well, I think we answered it right here because honestly, there are about 5 people outside of Cincinnati that know who Duke Tobin is. More should, most don't. And it's important. These are the kind of little nuggets that you get only from the Pro Report with the mad journalists Chris Dell and Joe Spano. What do you say we tie a bow around and get on out of here, man?
That's right. You had me at Cincinnati over, Joe.
There you go. I think we unearthed some pretty good futures on the win total market. We'll have some more good stuff next week because we'll come at you every Thursday. I don't know what I'm going to target yet for next week, but it'll be
so I know just for timing's sake, we're trying to keep these to like no more than 30, 35 minutes. We're almost at 40 minutes now. But for me next week, I have a lot of stuff that I've dug into that I want to go in terms of some of the stuff I'm putting on my card for player awards, a few bets for comeback player of the year,
awesome.
Defensive player of the year, rookie of the year as well. we'll try to squeeze in an NBA segment. I don't know if we'll do it on this show, if we'll split the shows up between NFL, NBA, but there's a few bets I've made already for the upcoming season with NBA Rookie of the Year, building off a lot of the momentum we had from the NBA draft and the NBA season. So we got a lot coming at you for the podcast, for the live stream, for myself, Chris Dell, for Mr. Joe Spano. We'll catch you next time, hopefully next week. And Joe,
we'll see you at the pay window.
There you go. Peace out, guys.